Poet by Elizabeth Acevedo. Recently listened to the audiobook version of this, and I really liked it. Of course, I remember back when this book first came out, and I tried to check it out from my local library, but they only had, I think they had about 5 copies of it. They were all checked out at the same time. And of course, I tried to get on the waiting list, but then I saw the actual wait list for it, and decided against it because it would have been like over a month before I could have gotten a copy of it. So, and then I tried to purchase it in a bookstore once. But I think, I decided against that because I had to buy some food first, and you know how it goes, when you're forced to decide between books or food. And being human, us human beings, we do need food to survive, to live, so to continue to exist. And so anyways, I was surprised when, eventually, I don't know, I had forgotten about this book for a while, and then found out I was able to download a copy of the audiobook with the help of my local library. And so and I listened to it, and again, like I said, I really liked it. I like that it's very poetic, pretty much, the author, she wrote out the bulk of it in, I want to say, verse form or something close to verse form. Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe most of the physical book is in verse form, or if not, like narrative, poetic form. And so, and me, I consider myself a poet as well. So I'm always interested in reading stuff like this that kind of strays away from the usual poetic kind of stuff. I guess what I really mean is, like, I always like reading novels that are written in a very poetic kind of way. So, I don't know how else to describe that. But, so pretty much the main character in this is Xiomara, and I want to say I believe it's loosely based on the author's childhood, growing up in somewhere in New York, I believe. And having to deal with her overly religious upbringing, or her parents, of course. She was brought up in a Dominican household, and I was able to relate to a lot of the stuff that she mentioned in this, and especially most of the stuff dealing with the fact that her mom was so religious that, pretty much like almost every single conversation that she has with her mom has to mention something to do with God or the church, or sin, or, and I guess I could relate to that because for me, my own childhood growing up, I had to deal with that. Maybe not quite so much as this character, but still, like, at least every other day, it seemed like, or at least a couple times a week. I remember, just being around my mom or some of my other relatives, and they'd be talking about how they were convinced that bad things were happening to them because the devil was doing it, or and despite the fact that they had no clear-cut evidence that, first off, that the devil existed at all, or but also that it just feels, obviously later as I got older, I figured out that it was their way of coping with certain things, and, which is pretty much like what this character, Xiomara, she kind of tries to understand her mom's point of view, but ultimately, like, she figures out that, that's her mom's way of dealing with things, and, because I guess, her mom was brought up in a very religious household, so, hence, that's really the only way that her mom knew how to cope with certain things. So, and I believe that's how it is for a lot of Hispanic families, Latino families. I don't know. It's just based on my own experience growing up in a Hispanic family. So, obviously I can't, I'm not saying it applies to every Hispanic family or minority family, but I feel like it pretty much applies to most. So, yeah. And not only that, but most religious families in general. So, yeah. Pretty much, that part of this audiobook I definitely related to. And then, of course, the rest of it is just, it deals with Xiomara, dealing with, the different changes that she's going through. Obviously, physical changes, emotional changes, and having her first boyfriend, or rather, like, first boyfriend with whom she's romantically involved, like the first time she gets intimately and romantically involved with a boyfriend, and she, of course, hides it from her parents because she knows them being so religious, they would freak out about it. And they actually do. I mean, I guess, I wouldn't want to give away the ending, but yeah, eventually her parents find out, and, like usual, I mean, that always seems to be the case, right? When teenagers, they try to hide something from their parents, eventually the parents find out, and one way or another, that's the way I feel. And then also too, because she has a twin, and she has a twin brother. She refers to him as Twin, and he's actually her twin brother struggles with, like, well, I guess not really a struggle, but like, because struggle in a way, like, because he's also coming to terms with his own physical changes, his own emotional changes, but also the fact that he's gay, and he's trying to deal with that, along with other regular teenage stuff. And he also gets romantically involved with another teenage boy, and although there's not much detail about that, I mean, as far as this is, I mean, because this audiobook focuses mostly on the main character, which is Xiomara, and the stuff she's going through. So, in a lot of ways, it's reminded me of other novels that are, like, written in journal form or diary form, except this one is written more in a poetic kind of way. Yeah, there's some pretty good details in this audiobook. Definitely, I would say, definitely very truthful also, as far as, I mean, I don't know exactly how honest it is, like, you know, as far as when the author wrote it, like, I don't know how, if everything she wrote actually happened to her, or if, you know, she just kind of stretched the truth a little bit, or, you know, if it's complete fiction or somewhat fiction, but most of the details that she mentions, you know, as far as like how she feels about this particular boy, the way in which she describes it was not only poetic, obviously, but also I felt very accurate as to, you know, how deeply a teenage girl can feel about a teenage boy. And not only that, but just how two teenagers in general can feel about each other. You know, they can just fall so deeply, madly, intensely in love with each other without even really knowing much about each other. And so, I mean, that's what I mean, like, when it came to describing that kind of intense emotional involvement, emotional attachment, you know, when it comes to teenagers, you know, how they get so overwhelmed by their emotions. And, you know, the author was, as far as I'm concerned, the author was dead on, really accurate with that. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I really have nothing bad to say about this. I don't know if this is the only thing that Elizabeth Acevedo has written, but I definitely like to read some of her other stuff. So, yeah. As far as the rating goes for this, I think I'd actually have to give it 5 stars. I mean, the bare minimum, 4.5. But, like I said, because there's nothing bad I have to say about it. I mean, you know, I was able to relate to a lot of it, especially, again, like I said, the part about her growing up in a religious household. Not only that, but a minority household. I was able to relate to all of that. Yeah, and the fact that, you know, the author very accurately portrays how crazy teenagers can be. Yeah, that's why I gotta give it 5 stars. So, yeah. If you haven't read this, I would recommend everybody read this or listen to the audiobook, because, you know, even if you can't relate to most of it, I'd say it would definitely give you some kind of insight into, you know, what it's like to grow up in a religious household, what it's like to grow up in a minority household, or even just what it's like to be a weird, well, kind of weird, kind of cool, but also kind of crazy teenager that's falling in love for the first time and not really wanting to tell your parents about it, but then your parents eventually do find out about it, and they freak out about it, and then, you know, makes things seem really terrible. And yeah, I don't really know what I was trying to say there, but I'm sure you kind of get it. I'm sure you kind of get the point. So, yeah, I mean, it's 5 stars all the way. That's pretty much it for this review. Thanks for watching this. Thanks for listening. As always, next time, don't forget, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.